you love movies and movie discussions, you've come to the right place. Who am I, you ask? I am the Wiz, and I'm here today to review the 1983 drama Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence, starring David Bowie, Tom Conti, Ryuichi Sakamoto, Takeshi Kitano, and Jack Thompson, directed by Nagisa Oshima. I guess the one thing I could really talk about when discussing this film is really David Bowie. David Bowie, of course, is a singer-songwriter who also ended up doing some films. I watched a number of years ago The Man Who Fell to Earth, and I gotta be honest with you, I was kind of mystified by it, not in a great way. I thought it was okay. I think it was Nicholas Roeg who directed that. I think the way he directed that seemed a little too stilted for me and still a little odd. It will probably be something I come back to, but I didn't get why people liked David Bowie as an actor, to be absolutely honest. And I mean, I looked at other movies that he's had cameos in, like Prestige, and the recent one I watched was The Last Temptation of Christ. I always felt he was a little odd when he was acting. I don't think he was really comfortable doing that. I don't think he was that interesting of an actor, to be absolutely honest. Now, if you want to talk about his music, yeah, I love his music. I think his music is great. But when it comes to him acting, I never was really that impressed. I actually was kind of confused as to why people liked him so much as an actor. Let's get into the review of Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence, directed by Nagisa Oshima. Before that, let us get into the plot. This is during World War II. British officer Jack Calliers, who is played by David Bowie, is captured by Japanese forces and held in a prison camp that is run by Captain Yanoi, played by Ryuichi Sakamoto. Calliers openly defies Yanoi, but he becomes fascinated by him, as does Sergeant Hara, played by Takeshi Kitano. While Calliers is in open defiance of the camp commander, Lieutenant Colonel John Lawrence, played by Tom Conti, attempts to find common ground between the British and Japanese soldiers with their beliefs. Alright, well that is the plot to this movie, so let's get into my first point. And my first point, the main theme about homoeroticism is the least interesting. So the one thing that gets talked about a lot with this movie is the very homoerotic nature of the film, and it's mainly to do with Captain Yanoi and how he treats and how he reacts to Officer Calliers, played by David Bowie. I'm not debating on whether that is true or not. I definitely think it is homoerotic. I think there is not just a tinge. I think it's a very strong homoeroticism in this movie, where Yanoi is utterly fascinated by Calliers. It just can't really process why he feels the way he does. It's just somebody who has this attraction but doesn't understand why, but also holds it back in. I find this theme to be the least interesting of this film, and I think it mainly has to do with Bowie and his performance. Now, if you want to just talk about physical attraction, sure, I get it. He's got a very captivating look. In this movie, he looks very fit, and the way that they shoot his eyes in this film, this is the first time I recognize that Bowie has two different colored eyes. I know that's something that a lot of people knew about beforehand, but this is the first time I actually noticed it, and I was mesmerized by that. When it comes to everything else about the character, I didn't really buy the infatuation. I didn't really buy exactly why someone would be unless it was just purely physical. And if that's the case, okay, fine, but I don't think the film really tries to make it to be just physical with Captain Yanoi. I think it's just to a point where he finds everything about this character fascinating, and I don't quite understand why that is. So I think when it comes to this theme, I think it's the least interesting. And my second point, the question of when to bridge cultures is a fascinating theme. I think the best thing about this movie has to do with Lawrence trying to bridge a gap between the Japanese soldiers and the other POWs, and having them try to understand each other's cultures to find common ground. And what's fascinating about it is this is something that I think we all strive to as people, to want to be able to do that. We want to have different cultures in our lives to better enrich ourselves, to then be more understanding of each other in the hope that they'll be understanding of our culture. This movie kind of questions if that is a good idea at some point, and I think that was a very fascinating thing to do. And mainly because it just doesn't seem like the Japanese in this movie have any interest in it. Or there really isn't any motivation in that case. So it makes Lawrence kind of look stupid most times when he's trying to do this, and almost traitor-like. Even though I think as an audience we understand where he's coming from, because deep down that's what we want too with different types of people and cultures in our lives. But what if the other culture just has no intention of doing that? There are scenes in this film where the Japanese soldiers, specifically Hara, who is played by Takeshi Kitano, who basically says, I think you're weak. If you lost your honor, if you've lost your respect, You don't gain it back. In order to gain it back, you kill yourself. You commit seppuku. That's what you do. To bridge that gap is kind of futile at that point. But in this movie, Lawrence tries to continue doing that, which I think a lot of the best drama in this movie lies, is where this guy is trying to be the bridge between these two people, and is just not realizing it is not worth the trouble. It is not worth the time. And I think that was easily the best thing about this movie. And my third point, Conti and Sakamoto carry the film. Okay, so here's the thing. I thought Bowie was okay. I did not believe the romance between Yanoi and Colliers, mainly because I didn't find Colliers that interesting of a character. I just didn't understand exactly why someone would be infatuated by him. Maybe it was the rebellious nature, but even that seemed kind of thin in this movie. But I will say that I definitely believe Sakamoto in this movie, where he was playing Yanoi, and I can believe the infatuation in his eyes and how he acted and everything. I think he did a fantastic job. It just felt odd seeing his performance and then seeing it against Bowie and being like, I don't understand why this guy would be this way, but man, do I believe that he is this way. It's like, I definitely believe that. And Conti, I think, is probably the best performance in this movie, mainly because of the way that he acts in all instances of the film, whether he's being insulted by the leader of the POWs or he's being insulted by the Japanese soldiers, and his desire to find peace and broker it throughout the entire time, and the emotional drama and range that he shows in this film. I think it was the best performance in this film. I think it was easily the most captivating, and I really like Conti's performance in this. All right, and here are the footnotes for Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence. And my only footnote is, does everyone like Bowie as an actor because of Labyrinth? I have not seen Labyrinth. I'm kind of debating on whether I should watch it, just to see if that is what it is. I don't understand why people say he's a good actor. I think it's mainly because he does weird films, and I can appreciate that. I can appreciate somebody who tries to do very different, very strange films to open himself up to different things. But I don't think he's that good. Again, I like him as a singer. I definitely see why people are captivated by him. I understand why he's entertaining. I think he's okay. I guess the way I would put it is, I don't think I would have him in a film where it requires a lot of depth and a very well-rounded performance. I would have him as like a showy kind of side character, I guess. But, oh well. I mean, that's my opinion at least. I'm pretty sure somebody's going to be on the comments going, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. You don't know what... Like, yeah, I get it. Fine. You feel differently. That's cool. But I honestly have now seen him in a couple of films, and I'm wondering what's the love of his acting career. So let me know in the comments. Overall, I'm going to recommend Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence. I think this is a good movie. I think it's an interesting film for a first watch. But I just found it puzzling that the most talked about thing about this movie is probably the least interesting thing. I'll be honest, I think the reason why this is talked about is mainly because of when it was released, and it was 83 was when this released, and there probably wasn't a lot of films that really dealt with this subject. But there are other themes in this film that I find infinitely more fascinating. The concept of honor between both parties, the trying to bridge the gap between the two cultures. I just think that stuff is a lot more fascinating than the homoeroticism between Colliers and Yanoi. But I would say definitely give this movie a shot. Is it as brutal as some other POW camp movies? Not really. It's not gory, it's not particularly brutal, but you do see some beatings, and someone commits suicide at some point. So if you're a little bit about that, maybe not watch this. But overall, I will recommend Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence. I think it's a good film. I will probably watch it again at some point. It's definitely interesting. So I recommend Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence. Now, if you want my full review on this movie, you can go to my website at IamTheWiz.com. You'll have my full written review right on the site, along with a link to the video that has this review that you've just listened to. Thank you for listening to this review. If you want to know what we're reviewing in the next couple of days, you can look on the screen right now to see what's coming up next. If you liked what you heard, go ahead and leave a like on this video. If you want to discuss your opinion on the film or the review itself, please leave a comment. And if you want to hear more, subscribe to the channel. Thank you again for listening. I will talk to you next time.